Hello there, and welcome to the Celestial. I'm Daryl, and today I'll be covering the Earth briefly. The Earth is the third planet from the Sun. It has an aphelion of 152 million kilometers, a perihelion of 147 million kilometers, and a semi-major axis of 149 million kilometers, which roughly translates to 1 astronomical unit, which is a unit of measurement used in astronomy. What do these numbers mean? On their own, not much, but when used in perspective, very important, as it allows one to understand how far away something is from the Sun using Earth's distance as a reference. Anyways, this makes 1 year on Earth 365 days-ish. The Earth tilts at 23.4 degrees, giving us seasons, and at the solstice is at its furthest tilt. However, Earth's tilt varies from 22.1 to 24.5 degrees every 40,000 years in a cycle. Meanwhile, a day on Earth is 24 hours. Kind of. Moving away from the Earth, we have Earth's satellites, both natural and artificial ones. We have our satellites, 2 space stations and a lot of space debris, and the Moon, but we also have 5 quasi-moons. In the easiest way I can put it for now, is an object that stays close to another object, in this case the Earth, but does not orbit it. The Earth is 4.5 billion years old, with a mean radius of 6,371 kilometers, a surface gravity of 9.97 meters per second squared, and a mean density of 5.514 grams per cubic centimeter, making it the densest planet in the solar system. Like all planets, the Earth is not actually a sphere, but is actually a shape resembling an oblate spheroid, with the poles flatter and the equator bulging out. However, that isn't entirely accurate either, as the Earth is not entirely smooth. Like all planets, Earth's interior is layered. The outer layer is the crust, which is the outside part of the Earth that we live on, with all the wonderful things we see like oceans, mountains, canyons, plains, pollution, etc. Oceans cover 70.8% of the Earth's surface, and beneath the waves are underwater trenches, plains, volcanoes, and the deepest point on Earth, Challenger Deep. Also, 97.5% of the Earth's water is saline and the rest is freshwater. The remaining 29.2% is land, which is covered in deserts, plains, mountains, etc., all with different climates and everything. On land is the highest point, Mount Everest, the tallest mountain, Mount Kea, and Chimborazo, furthest point from Earth's center due to it being at the equator and at the Earth bulges out there. The crust is divided into tectonic plates, which are enormous slabs of rock that float on the mantle. These plates move really slowly, like 3 centimeters a year slowly, due to convection currents generated in the mantle below, causing the mantle material to pull on the plates. The plates can subduct, collide, form material, and break, creating mountains, valleys, trenches, and earthquakes. Beneath the crust is the mantle, which is technically solid, but over millions of years it actually starts to move, so it really resembles a really viscous liquid made of molten rock. Beneath the mantle is the outer core, which is made of liquid iron and nickel, and below that is the inner core, which is solid and also made of iron and nickel. The outer core generates the magnetic field that surrounds the Earth, as it's made of molten iron alloys that move, forming a geodynamo. Earth's internal heat comes from 20% leftover heat from when the planet formed from colliding protoplanets, while the remaining 80% is from radioactive decay of uranium, thorium, and potassium. The Earth has a mean temperature of 14.9 degrees Celsius, an average surface pressure of 1040 millibars, and its atmospheric composition comprises of 78% nitrogen, 21% oxygen, and the rest is made of other gases. Although due to climate change, the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere has risen dramatically in the last few centuries and especially in the last few decades, with our mean temperature increasing as well. Surrounding the Earth is its atmosphere, which is also divided into layers. The atmosphere doesn't technically end, but gets thinner and thinner until it fades into space. The layer we live in, the troposphere, is the lowest and the thickest, with enough oxygen concentration for us to live. As most of the atmosphere's water vapor is here, most of the weather occurs in its layer. Above the troposphere and the tropopause is the stratosphere. The weird thing is, unlike at the troposphere, where the higher you go, it gets colder as the air is less dense, here at the stratosphere, it gets warmer the higher you go, due to UV absorption by the ozone layer, although temperatures are still usually below freezing. Planes usually fly here as the air is less dense, so it makes them more efficient. The stratosphere ends at the stratopause. Above the stratosphere is the mesosphere, where temperatures start to drop again, and it's the coldest place on Earth, with temperatures below negative 85 degrees Celsius. It is so high up that only sounding rockets and some balloons can access it. But it is too low for satellites to orbit, as it's where they start to burn up and disintegrate along with meteors. Although the official start of space is 100 kilometers at the Kármán line, there is still some atmosphere beyond that point, which is why satellites start to slowly fall back to Earth as they collide with atmospheric particles. Although technically in space there is still atmosphere here, in an area called the thermosphere. Spacecraft orbit the Earth here like the ISS. Due to solar radiation, it gets hotter here the higher you go up, which can get up to 25,000 degrees Celsius, but because the air is so non-existent, it will still be cold here. Due to radiation, radio waves can bounce back to the Earth when they are aimed at this layer. Also, auroras form here. Now the final part of our atmosphere, the exosphere. Here it is basically interstellar space, but the atoms are still gravitationally bound to the Earth. The Earth sustains a biosphere made of many different ecosystems. with our biosphere starting to form 3.5 billion years ago or earlier depending on the source. Earth's biosphere is made of different biomes. It is estimated that there are 8.7 million species living on Earth, but we've only catalogued 1.74. Also, 99% of all species have already gone extinct. Life can be found all over the Earth, from the rainforest to the deep oceanic trenches to the polar ice caps to inside your body to your pillow. As of September 2019, Earth is still the only planet in the universe known to have life, but scientists are still looking for alien life elsewhere. Earth's biosphere is currently under threat by human activities such as mining, logging, deforestation, carbon emissions, and more. 4.5 billion years ago, there was a nebula. One day, a supernova happened nearby and caused the nebula to collapse. The sun formed out of the collapsing material, and the material that didn't collapse into the sun started forming a protoplanetary disk. And out of that disk, the remaining material formed planetesimals which collided to form protoplanets. After a period of extreme violence, the Earth formed, one of the few survivors of the era. The Hadean era had started, and the Earth's crust had solidified and the interior differentiated, with the heavier material sinking into the core. Then one day, a protoplanet called Theia hit the Earth, and the debris formed a ring which formed the Moon, which was extremely close to the Earth at first before it drifted away. Also, the impact changed our rotation speed, which the newly formed Moon slowed down all the way until the 24 hours we have today. 4.1 billion years ago, the late heavy bombardment happened, causing asteroids to hit the Earth. The main theory is that the orbits of the gas giants switched, causing waves of asteroids to fly into the inner solar system. Life might have already formed at this point and survived the asteroid impact by hiding in vents. There might have already been oceans, which might have covered most of the Earth's surface, which formed when the Earth cooled, forming clouds and rain. By the Archean era 4 billion years ago, the first protocontinents had formed, and from 4 billion years ago all the way until 600 million years ago, life was still single-cell organisms. 3.6 billion years ago, the first known supercontinent called Valbara formed, which is only one supercontinent in a very, very long supercontinent cycle. Around 3 billion years ago, cyanobacteria evolved to photosynthesize, creating a lot of oxygen in an event called the Great Oxidation Event, as the atmosphere started to be filled with oxygen. This marks the start of the Proterozoic Eon. The oxygen was toxic to the microorganisms that did not use it, and they began to die off. All the oxygen began to react to the greenhouse gases that kept the Earth warm, causing the world to freeze over, which is now called Snowball Earth. Around 600 million years ago, now in the eon we are in, the Phanerozoic Eon, the last Snowball Earth melted away, and suddenly there was a huge explosion in the diversity of life, called the Cambrian explosion, with all sorts of new creatures like worms, jellyfish, and trilobites. Around this time, the ozone layer had formed, and the land was no longer baked by UV radiation. Life finally began to move on land, first plants and then animals. In the 600 million years since life went on land, diversified, a lot went extinct 5 different times, ranging from the worst, called the Great Dying, 252 million years ago, which killed off 90% of all species but also created the dinosaurs, to the KT extinction, with the asteroid and killing of the dinosaurs and other life. Today, we are in the midst of the 6th mass extinction, the Holocene extinction, caused by human activities. The world's deadliest animal, us. Although I do not intend to dive deep into our evolution and early history, it is important to note that there is more than one human species. We have found fossils from 15 species of human, but we are the only ones left. As we all know, humans evolved from chimps and we came from Africa. Our species of human, Homo sapiens, has only been around for 300,000 years, which means there was a time of overlap with other human species with interbreeding and such. And probably wars too. Humans have basically spread all over the globe with the help of the ice ages, causing sea levels to drop, allowing humans to cross into North America. Now onto civilization. Note that this video is called The Earth Briefly, not The World Briefly, so I'm gonna gloss over a lot of things. Civilization basically started because of farming. Farming meant people could live in a fixed location and not everyone needed to be a farmer, so language developed, religions, culture, etc. All of this was under the Neolithic Revolution. Technology developed, although slowly at first. Nations formed, city-states formed, wars were started, empires formed. One thing led to another, and then the scientific and industrial revolutions changed the world. Climate change started, globalization started, technology basically exploded, and well, more wars here and there, nukes, space travel, the internet, memes, unholy amounts of memes, just so many memes, Avengers Endgame, and the Raid Area 51. And here we are today. One thing to note about human history is that civilization itself is only about 10,000 years, and our modern way of life is only a few centuries old, and in some places only a few decades old. And that's basically everything about the Earth, briefly.